Hey, what's up? This is John from Inside Airsoft. Today we're going to be reviewing the KJW 1911. Now the reason I love this 1911, I bought it over the TM version, one for price, but two, it's a full metal construction, so I'm pretty rough on my stuff, especially when playing. I don't even think about it, so I like the rigidity of the metal body and slide. So that's one of the reasons I purchased it. The other reason being is it accepts CO2 and green gas mags. I live in Canada, so it's important for me to have CO2 operated pistols because in winter games it's just way too cold for green gas. You might get off a shot or two and they might come out at 100 FPS. So CO2 is kind of a must here if you game outdoors in the winter. So let's dive down deep on the table and we'll go over some of the specs. So this is the box and packaging you'll get with your KJ Works 1911. This is a CO2 version, and this is the version 2. The biggest difference I've seen between the version 1 and the version 2 is the color of the nozzle, and the blowback unit may be a little bit different because of that. The other thing is it's mainly the CO2 magazine. So let's toss this off. Inside you'll see there's a KJ Works booklet, just really advertising their products. Here's the manual. Tells you don't shoot people in the face. Really, it's just a parts breakdown. That's the only thing that's important. So if you ever need to order anything, you could do that. You have KJ Works BBs. I would ignore them. They don't look very good. I didn't even open the package. You have a takedown tool, which allows you to get the barrel out of a 1911. It's pretty common on airsoft 1911s. In here you have the version 2 CO2 magazine. We'll talk about that in a second. And last but not least, you have the 1911 itself. Now, like I mentioned, this is a full metal construction gun. Has great sound, has great tactile feel to it. The other thing I like about it is the weight. This is pretty similar to a real steel 1911. I've fired both a Colt 1911 and a Springfield Armory 1911. They're pretty similar in weight. This may actually be a little bit heavier, weirdly enough. So the biggest difference between this and the version 1, this has a red nozzle. The version 1, I believe, had a blue nozzle. I've never actually played with one, so I can't really give that much more detail. The big one I've noticed is the version 2 CO2 cartridge magazine has a smaller base plate where the version 1 had that big bubble. This still does not sit flush within the gun, but it is much less noticeable. I prefer it anyways. I also do own a green gas magazine for this gun. This has a little more reliability issues. The reason for that is, one, I live in Canada, so the colder weather does affect the green gas a lot here. The other thing is if you fire off rapidly, you may only get off 4 or 5 shots before it completely depletes the green gas. I've seen people have different results with these magazines. I actually did modify it so that the gas nozzle sits up a little bit higher. I shimmed it. It did improve the efficiency of it, but it's still not the greatest thing in the world. The reason why I actually like this magazine a lot better, and I wish it worked a little bit better, is that it sits completely flush with the gun, like real steel, and it just looks better. Both of these magazines have a capacity of about 24 rounds. The CO2 you'll get off about 2.5 magazines before you have to change out the cartridge. Like I said with the green gas, it's hit or miss. Sometimes you'll get 15 rounds out of it, sometimes you'll get 4. So it really just does depend. As long as you don't rapid fire on this, I find you get somewhere between 8 and 12. So the main difference with the magazines is the FPS and reliability. So I find that the CO2 is far more reliable than the green gas. The other thing is on the CO2, they say it's Canadian compliant. I think that's just to get it in the country, which means that it has to be over 366 feet per second. I've chronoed it. It chronos in around 350 to 360, so it should be okay at most fields. I know some are under 350, and it's pretty close to that line. but it really does depend on how full the CO2 cartridge is and everything. The green gas is around 310 to 320, sometimes even less depending on how cold it is outside or inside. So those are the big things I find the difference. If you have the ability, I would use CO2 always. The only reason I own this is I do play at an indoor field where 350 is the limit, and if the CO2 chrono is in hot, I will use green gas mags and it's not an issue. Now onto the gun itself. The construction of the gun is fantastic. There's very little wobble in the slide, if any at all. The hammer is very, very tactile, snaps back into place. The trigger itself is very snappy, which I like. I do some competition shooting, so that clickiness is very important for me. I like to know right where my trigger pull is. The 1911 has a few different safeties. First one being is just a safety lever. Once the hammer is cocked, the safety lever can be put up. The trigger will not pull with that engaged. You need to take down the safety lever and pull the trigger. The second is a beaver tail. So if you do not depress the beaver tail safety, you cannot pull the trigger. I'm pushing on it pretty good. Push in the beaver tail safety, allows you to pull the trigger. Third one is this gun will allow you to half cock it. Even with the beaver tail depressed, safety off, trigger does nothing. This is single action only, meaning that if the hammer is not cocked back, the trigger will not fire. This gun can be decocked. All you have to do is push back on the hammer, which depresses the beaver tail, pull on the trigger slightly, and decock. Now, fully decocking can be a little bit tricky. If you happen to let go of the hammer, you will fire off a round. So what I would suggest doing is pushing down, going to a half cock position. So you're still safe, nothing can happen. So that's everything I have to say about this gun. I personally love it. It's my favorite 1911 on the market. The other alternative I would go with is the Tokyo Marui. The reason for me going with this 1911 over it is because it's full metal. Like I had said, I'm pretty rough on my stuff and I use it, so I didn't want to risk breaking anything. The other thing is this is Marui compatible, so any of the parts that you would use to upgrade that Tokyo Marui gun can be put in this. The only thing that isn't real steel or Marui compatible are the grips, and that's because it has this cutout for the CO2 cartridge. All you have to do is shave down the inside of the real steel grips and they will fit on this gun. I'm going to be changing them because I don't particularly love these plasticky grips, but they are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Hey, so hopefully you enjoyed that review. Please click the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content. I'm going to be making videos pretty often, so check them out. Thanks.